NPC is an acronym that stands for non-player character. They are the AI-operated characters in video games that react to input from the player. Because of the limitations on computer hardware and the complexity of writing AI capable of reacting to players in a way that truly mimics human behavior, NPCs, or bots, are usually pretty easy to spot. Anyone who has played a video game that includes NPCs will tell you that they are extremely formulaic and quickly become predictable in their responses, especially older NPCs. Let's use the primitive example of Pac-Man. In the game Pac-Man, the player is Pac-Man, the iconic yellow circle with a mouth that moves around the maze, gobbling up the pellets until they're all gone. Once the pellets have all been eaten up, the maze resets and you do it all over again. The NPCs in Pac-Man are different colored ghosts. Each ghost in Pac-Man has a unique set of rules in how it's going to react to the outside stimuli, or in other words, how it's going to react to what the player is telling Pac-Man to do with the joystick. The red ghost will always attempt to find the quickest way to reach Pac-Man, while the blue ghost uses a set of rules that actually cause it in some instances to run away from Pac-Man. They each use separate pre-programmed strategies to try to trap Pac-Man, and they never, ever stray from these strategies. The rules are so simple and predictable that players who have beat Pac-Man by playing the game to the 256th level, which is the level that crashes the game because it runs out of memory, they're accomplishing this simply by memorizing the most effective path for each level. In other words, if you complete a level of Pac-Man by taking a certain route, you will know that taking that route will complete that level every single time you play it. The ghosts will never figure out your strategy no matter how many times Pac-Man takes that exact same route, because they're responding to the actions of Pac-Man using the exact same predefined set of rules. So if you were to record the game input of someone playing the perfect game of Pac-Man, you could play back that input into the game over and over and over again, and it would always be the perfect game. Recently, people have been pointing out that some humans behave in the same way that NPCs do. They say they aren't reasoning through their decisions, but rather feeding outside stimuli through predefined rules and then acting accordingly. This is an interesting way of looking at people that exhibit predictable behavior. People that seem to lack creativity and whose behavior, because it's dictated by a predefined set of rules, are just as easy to manipulate as the ghosts in Pac-Man. In some ways, it's hard to argue against this theory. I mean, there are extremely predictable people who do seem to be reacting to stimuli just using a predefined set of rules. But if this is true, aren't we all just NPCs? Aren't we all reacting to a complex set of rules, and it's just that some people have much simpler sets of rules that make them easier to predict? So like the NPCs, they're easy to spot. NPCs have evolved a lot since Pac-Man. In fact, the major difference, or the upgrade, I guess, between Pac-Man and the sequel, Miss Pac-Man, is that the programmers added randomness to the behavior of the ghosts. So while the NPCs, the ghosts, operate in a similar fashion using similar rules, in Miss Pac-Man, a random change in course is added randomly to the behavior of the NPCs so that the players can't just memorize patterns in the same way they could with Pac-Man. Each game is unique because the ghosts are less predictable, but still predictable enough to be beat by humans because their programming is fairly simple. Today's games use NPCs that are far more complex with more sophisticated sets of rules that also use some level of randomness to prevent repetitive behavior and make them harder to spot, but because we are still limited by the hardware and the software available in gaming systems, they still lack that same decision-making power of humans. But are humans anything more than just extremely complex NPCs with access to better hardware and better software? Still reacting to a set of rules programmed in their head, perhaps with some randomness caused by changes in things like hormone levels or blood sugar changes, or all the other changes taking place in the cacophony of biological factors going on inside the body at any given moment. But still, by and large, just reacting to a set of rules. I would say the NPC theory has merit, but that the difference isn't so much that these human NPCs are just reacting to stimuli in a way that makes them separate from quote-unquote thinking people. I think that's how all humans behave. The difference is that some people, much like the NPCs in video games, never change their set of rules. They aren't NPCs because they're following predefined rules. They're NPCs because those rules never change. Just as the ghosts in Pac-Man are limited by the code that was written 40 years ago, if you were to play a game of Pac-Man today, it'll react exactly the same way as it did in 1982. These human NPCs have their rules written in their head, and they never perform any upgrades. They never revisit the code that was written in their head by their parents, the media, religion, or whatever influenced their set of instructions. They simply move through life and react to the stimuli using their original programming. An NPC's behavior is forever defined by their programmers. Sometimes NPCs are reprogrammed, just like the ghosts in Miss Pac-Man, but an NPC will never be able to change its rules. It'll never be able to rewrite its own code. So if you don't want to be an NPC, you have to do what NPCs are unable to do, and that's be creative. Only those who are able and willing to revisit their programming and perform the necessary updates themselves will be able to rise above this predictable existence and automatic behavior of the mindless NPCs. For BlackPilled, I'm Devin Stack. If you like my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you share. Also, my book, The Day of the Rope, will be coming out this week. I'm going to put a link in the description as soon as I get it. I'm also going to do a live stream where I read probably the first chapter of the book. So look for an announcement on that. If you'd like to support my videos, you can send crypto to the addresses below, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/BlackPilled.